Welcome to Books and Bites, where we break down the best books in minutes to supercharge your learning. Today we're taking a deep dive into Friedrich Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil, published in 1886. It's a book that still has the power to shake us up and make us question everything we think we know.
It really does.
About morality, truth, and even the very nature of philosophy itself.
What's so fascinating about Nietzsche is that he doesn't just critique these big, weighty concepts.
Right.
He really digs into the psychology behind them.
Yeah.
He wants to understand why we cling to certain beliefs.
Okay.
Especially in the realm of morality.
So he's not just saying this is wrong.
Right.
He's trying to figure out why we believe it's right in the first place.
Exactly. And one of his most provocative ideas is that even philosophers, those supposed paragons of reason and objectivity, are driven by hidden motives and biases.
Okay.
He calls this the will to power.
Will to power.
This inherent desire we all have to exert influence to shape the world according to our own perspectives.
So even someone like Descartes, with his emphasis on pure logic and a thinking soul, might actually be pushing an agenda.
Precisely, Nietzsche might say that Descartes' idea of a pure and rational soul isn't some objective truth, but a way of seeing the world that elevates a certain kind of thinking.
I see.
Think about it this way. Someone who really values logic and reason might be drawn to a career that gives them a sense of control or authority, like becoming a scientist or a professor. It's not necessarily a conscious choice,
Right.
but it reflects that underlying will to power.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. So if even the greatest thinkers are subject to these biases, how can any of us be sure we're seeing the world clearly?
That's a question Nietzsche wants us to grapple with, and it leads us to one of his most intriguing concepts.
Yeah.
The free spirit. This is the individual who has the courage to question everything, to break free from dogma and conventional morality.
Interesting.
They're not afraid of uncertainty. In fact, they embrace it.
I love that idea, the free spirit. It's like they're constantly pushing the boundaries of knowledge, always looking for those aha moments that come from challenging your assumptions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Nietzsche believes that those aha moments are crucial for personal growth and intellectual development. The free spirit is always evolving, always questioning, always becoming.
It's like they're on a constant quest for truth, even if that truth is always shifting and changing.
And speaking of challenging assumptions, Nietzsche takes aim at something pretty central to a lot of people's lives, religion. He's especially critical of Christianity, arguing that it promotes a kind of weakness and submissiveness that goes against our natural instincts for growth and self-assertion.
So instead of empowering people, he's saying Christianity actually kind of diminishes them.
In a way, yes. He sees it as a system that encourages people to look outward for morality and meaning.
Okay.
Instead of finding it within themselves.
Yeah.
He sees concepts like sin and guilt as tools of control meant to keep people in line rather than helping them reach their full potential.
That's a pretty bold claim, especially for the time period he was writing in.
It is.
But I can see how it connects to his idea of the will to power. He's essentially saying that religion, or at least certain interpretations of it, can be a way of suppressing that natural drive for self-actualization.
Right. And this ties into another important concept in Beyond Good and Evil.
Okay.
The distinction between master morality and slave morality.
Okay.
Nietzsche believes that morality isn't this fixed universal thing.
Okay.
Instead, it's evolved over time, shaped by power dynamics and the values of different groups.
Right.
He argues that master morality originated from strong, independent individuals. Think of figures like Achilles from the Iliad, or maybe even a historical figure like Julius Caesar.
Okay.
These individuals weren't afraid to assert themselves, to take risks, to strive for greatness.
Right.
Their morality was based on their own strength and self-confidence.
I see.
They defined good as whatever was noble, powerful, and life-affirming.
So it's a morality born of confidence and self-belief, not obedience to external rules.
Exactly. Now contrast that with slave morality,
Okay.
which Nietzsche argues emerged from a place of resentment and powerlessness. Imagine a group of people who are constantly told they're inferior,
Right.
maybe because of their social status or their lack of wealth.
Okay.
Over time, they might start to internalize those beliefs
Yep.
and flip the script on what's considered good. They start to value things like humility, obedience, and compassion, not necessarily because they truly believe in them,
Yeah.
but because it's a way to survive in a system that's stacked against them.
Right.
And in some ways, it becomes a way to exert power over the strong, to make them feel guilty for their strength and ambition.
It's like a subtle form of rebellion almost. Instead of challenging the power structure directly, They undermine it by changing the definition of what's considered good and valuable.
That's a great way to put it. And Nietzsche sees this dynamic at play throughout history, and especially in the development of Christianity.
Which he views as the ultimate expression of slave morality.
Exactly. With its emphasis on humility, self-sacrifice, and turning the other cheek, he sees it as a system that ultimately reinforces the power of the weak over the strong.
Wow.
Now, of course, this is a very provocative take on Christianity, and it's certainly open to debate.
Sure.
But it's important to understand where Nietzsche is coming from and why he sees this dynamic as so crucial to understanding the evolution of morality.
It's definitely making me think about these concepts in a whole new way.
Yeah.
So if traditional morality and even religion are suspect in Nietzsche's eyes, what does he offer in its place?
That's where his concept of the higher man comes in.
Okay.
But I think that's a perfect place to wrap up part 1 of our deep dive. Welcome back to Books and Bites.
Right.
Last time we delved into Nietzsche's critique of traditional morality and religion, exploring his ideas about master and slave morality.
Right.
Now let's shift our focus to how he applies this lens to another powerful force in society, academics.
This should be interesting. Nietzsche taking on the ivory tower. I have a feeling he might ruffle some feathers here.
You're absolutely right. In the section titled We Scholars, Nietzsche doesn't hold back.
Yeah.
He critiques academics for often being more interested in accumulating knowledge than actually applying it to their lives or challenging existing power structures.
So he sees them as a bit detached from reality.
That's a good way to put it. He worries that they can get so caught up in their specialized fields of study that they miss the bigger picture. They become experts in minutiae while neglecting the fundamental questions about life meaning and existence that philosophy is supposed to address.
I can see how that could happen. But how does this tie back to his ideas about slave morality?
Well, Nietzsche argues that this intellectual timidity, this reluctance to challenge established ideas, is a symptom of slave morality. Academics, he suggests, can be too afraid of rocking the boat, of being ostracized or ridiculed for thinking differently. They become more concerned with fitting in and maintaining the status quo than pushing boundaries and pursuing truly groundbreaking ideas.
So instead of being these free spirits, these independent thinkers he admires, they become trapped by the very systems they're supposed to be analyzing and critiquing.
Precisely. They become, in a sense, slaves to conventional thinking.
Wow.
And this, Nietzsche believes, is a major obstacle to true intellectual progress. He yearns for more free spirits in academia, individuals who are willing to question everything, even the most sacred cows of their respective fields.
So it's not enough to just be intelligent. You also need a healthy dose of courage and a willingness to challenge the norm.
Absolutely. And this leads us to another provocative critique Nietzsche makes in Beyond Good and Evil, which is his assessment of what he calls modern virtues.
So now he's taking on virtues. Aren't virtues supposed to be, good things?
Right.
What's his issue with them?
Well, Nietzsche believes that many of the virtues we celebrate today, while seemingly positive on the surface, are actually rooted in slave morality and can hinder individual growth and self-realization. He specifically targets qualities like equality, humility, and self-sacrifice.
Wait, those are bad things.
Well,
I thought those were the cornerstones of a just and compassionate society.
They can be, of course, but Nietzsche sees potential shadow side to them. For example, while striving for equality is essential for social justice, he argues that an overemphasis on it can stifle individuality and excellence. He worries that it can lead to a lowering of standards where everyone is encouraged to be average, rather than striving for their full potential.
So instead of celebrating those who rise above, we end up celebrating mediocrity.
That's one way to look at it. And then there's humility. While being humble can be a virtue, Nietzsche worries that it can also be a mask for insecurity or resentment. He suggests that some people might downplay their achievements or talents out of fear of standing out or incurring the envy of others.
So it becomes less about genuine humility and more about trying to fit in and avoid conflict.
Exactly. And then there's self-sacrifice, which is often seen as the ultimate virtue. While acts of selflessness can be admirable, Nietzsche cautions that excessive self-sacrifice can be a form of self-denial. It can prevent individuals from pursuing their own goals and happiness, potentially leading to resentment and bitterness down the line.
So he's not saying we should throw these virtues out the window, but rather be more critical of them, understanding their potential downsides, and ensuring they're not being used to manipulate or control us.
Precisely. He wants us to be wary of any morality, even one that appears virtuous, if it hinders individual growth and the expression of our unique will to power. And the same critical lens applies to his view of nationalism, which he explores in the section Peoples and Fatherlands.
Okay, so how does nationalism fit into this critique of potentially limiting systems of thought?
Nietzsche sees nationalism as another form of slave morality that can stifle individuality and creativity. He argues that it encourages blind loyalty to a group or a nation, often at the expense of independent thinking and critical judgment.
So you're essentially surrendering your own autonomy and moral compass to the will of the group.
Exactly. You're adopting a prepackaged set of values and beliefs and developing your own. And Nietzsche believes that this kind of unquestioning allegiance is a recipe for mediocrity and can even lead to conflict and prejudice. He argues that true progress, both personal and societal, comes from individuals who are willing to think for themselves, challenge norms, and transcend artificial boundaries like national borders.
So he's not necessarily anti-community or anti-collaboration, but he's wary of the dangers of blind allegiance and groupthink.
He believes that the best minds should focus on developing their own unique talents and perspective, rather than being limited by the dictates of a nation or a political ideology.
It seems like a common thread running through all of Nietzsche's critiques is this idea that true strength and fulfillment come from individual self-realization, from breaking free from external control and becoming the authors of our own lives.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to his concept of the higher man, which he explores in the final section of the book titled, What is Noble? This is where he lays out his vision for what it means to live a truly meaningful and empowered life.
This is what we've been waiting for. After all this deconstruction of traditional morality and societal structures, what does Nietzsche propose as an alternative? What does this higher man actually look like?
This is where Nietzsche really gets to the heart of his philosophy.
The
higher man is not simply someone who rejects conventional morality, but rather someone who transcends it. They create their own values based on a deep understanding of themselves and the world around them.
So it's not about nihilism or just doing whatever you want. It's about a conscious and deliberate creation of a personal code of ethics.
Exactly. It's about becoming the author of your own life, defining what's good and meaningful for you, not based on what society dictates, but based on your own unique will to power. That inner drive for growth and self-actualization that Nietzsche sees as fundamental to human nature.
But doesn't that sound a little dangerous? If everyone just creates their own values, wouldn't society descend into chaos?
It's a valid concern and one that Nietzsche addresses directly. He's not advocating for anarchy or a complete disregard for social order. The higher man understands that living in a society requires some degree of cooperation and consideration for others.
So how does this individual who creates their own values navigate a world that's still largely governed by traditional morality?
It's not easy, and that's why Nietzsche emphasizes that the path of the higher man is not for everyone. It requires immense courage, self-awareness, and intellectual honesty. It's a constant process of self-overcoming, of pushing past your limits and challenging your own assumptions.
So it's not a destination, it's a journey.
Precisely. And it's a journey that's often fraught with difficulty and struggle. But Nietzsche believes that it's through these challenges that we forge ourselves into something stronger, more resilient, and more capable of creating something truly meaningful in the world.
It reminds me of that famous Nietzsche quote, that which does not kill us makes us stronger.
Yes.
It seems like the higher man embraces those difficult experiences, those moments of suffering as opportunities for growth.
Absolutely. They understand that the path to greatness is rarely easy or comfortable. And it's through these struggles that they develop a sense of what Nietzsche calls nobility.
What does this Nietzschean nobility actually entail?
For Nietzsche, true nobility is an inner quality, not an external one. It's about having a strong will, a creative spirit, and an unyielding commitment to personal growth. It's about embracing challenge and difficulty, using those experiences to forge yourself into something even stronger and more self-aware.
So it's almost like turning suffering into fuel for self-improvement.
That's a great way to put it. The higher man doesn't shy away from pain or discomfort. They see it as an essential part of the process of becoming. They are driven by a deep sense of purpose, a commitment to self-mastery, and a desire to create something beautiful and meaningful in the world.
This is pretty inspiring stuff. It's making me want to go out and conquer the world.
You and me both.
But before I do that, maybe we should recap some of the key takeaways from Beyond Good and Evil.
That's a great idea.
We've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we have.
First and foremost, Nietzsche challenges us to question everything. To be skeptical of those who claim to hold the one true answer.
Right.
And to recognize that truth is often subjective and shaped by power dynamics.
Yeah.
He encourages us to become free spirits, embracing uncertainty and challenging conventional morality.
He really does.
He's like the ultimate philosophical rebel, urging us to break free from all those systems of thought that might be holding us back from reaching our full potential.
Exactly. And he offers us a powerful alternative in the concept of the higher man.
Okay, the higher man.
The individual who creates their own values, embraces challenge, and strives for a life of meaning and purpose beyond the constraints of traditional morality.
It's a challenging vision for sure.
It is.
But also incredibly inspiring.
Yeah.
It's a call to action to become the best versions of ourselves, to create our own destinies, and to leave our unique mark on the world.
It's a book that stays with you long after you finish reading it, prompting you to re-examine your own assumptions about good and evil, truth and falsehood, and what it truly means to live a meaningful life.
Well said. For all of you listening, we highly encourage you to pick up a copy of Beyond Good and Evil and explore Nietzsche's ideas for yourself. You might not agree with everything he says, but his work is guaranteed to make you think differently about the world and your place in it.
Absolutely.
Get your copy from the link in description and subscribe to Books and Bites for more insightful summaries.